Recording's in progress. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. The topic of today is elevate from an amateur to a professional. Elevate from an amateur to a professional. So I've got a list of thoughts here on that I went back and took from a superstar retreat years ago. Speaking of Mike Berry, on elevating from an amateur to a professional, I went through these, kind of modified them a little bit to stuff that we've been talking about recently. And these are really good points on how to elevate your business. Now, you can take amateur, professional, however you want to phrase it. This is really great points for everybody to enhance their business. So we're going to go through that. But before we do that, I actually looked up the definition of amateur. Now, anytime you look up a definition of a word, they always give you like 3 or 4 different definitions. But I wanted to look this up just to see like what really is an amateur. So here's what the definition of an amateur is, if anyone's curious. Engaging or engaged in without payment. An amateur is engaging or engaged in without payment. So an example they give is, a person who engages in a pursuit, especially a sport, or an unpaid rather than a professional basis. So essentially an amateur is someone who's engaged in activities but without payment. A professional, as you can fathom, is the exact opposite. The definition of a professional is engaged in a specific activity as one's main paid occupation. Engage in a specified activity as one's main paid occupation. So here's really the difference, right? The actual definition of the two words amateur and professional is that an amateur, by definition, engages in activities and does not get paid. A professional engages in activities and gets paid. So it really is that simple of a difference between one person gets paid and one person doesn't. So we need to talk about how do you elevate from an amateur to a professional, because I'm guessing everyone here got into real estate to make some money. Can I guess correctly on that? Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure that I'm in the right room. I love the people that say, well, I got into real estate because I love people and houses and stuff like that. Okay. So let me ask you, would you do it for free? No. Okay. You got in it for money. Okay. That's great. Yes, you can make money by dealing with people and houses and all these other different things, but you wouldn't do it for free. I had a boss one time tell me one of the people in our office were complaining about their job, and he goes, look, let me tell you the truth. Nobody likes their job. That's why they have to pay you to go. And I just thought that was a really good point. You wouldn't do it for free. We'd all be doing something else today. It's beautiful outside. So that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. So let's go through these different points on how do you elevate from an amateur to a professional. Now, here's the thing. You've heard some of these before. Maybe you've heard all of them before. Maybe it's the first time you've heard it, or maybe it's a great reminder, even though it is something you've heard before. They're not written in any particular order of importance. This is just how they're written. So let's dive into the first point here. Elevate from an amateur to professional. Point number 1, be more specific in the personal goals that you set. Be more specific in the personal goals that you set. So give me an example of a non-specific goal that sometimes real estate agents set.
I want to be successful.
I want to be successful. Great. Yep. Well, what's your goal? Well, I want to be a successful real estate agent. Okay. Now I have to go look up the definition of successful, right? Because it's an opinion. I want to make more money. I want to close more transactions. I want to do more than I did last year. I want to be better at the scripts, right? Those are vague statements that I see all the time on business plans or on goal setting sheets. Why is that a problem? You know, yeah, making more money is good. Being successful is good. Why is that a problem when setting goals?
It's not specific and hard to measure.
We'll say it again, Victor.
It's not specific and it's hard to measure and plan ahead.
Right. It's hard to measure. It's hard to measure. So how will you know if you got there? Right. And what's the reward for getting there? Well, I want to be successful. Okay, well, your definition of successful, my definition of successful might be two completely different things, one way or the other. I might look at you as successful. You might look at yourself as a failure. You might think you're successful, and I think, what the hell are you doing all day? Right? So the definition of success changes per person. So you can't really find that going throughout the year. Well, I want to make more money. Okay. So the problem is, let's say you do make more money, but what if you make more money and it's only September? And it's like, okay, great, you made more money, but does that really make a difference? So you have to be more specific in the personal goals that you set. Oh, I want to, or here's another one, right? That's not money related. Well, I want to travel. Where? When? How? My goal is to go to Italy. Okay. Well, when do you want to go there?
Also learn too to look into it and see how much it is so that you have an idea of how much it's going to cost.
That's it. Denise, you got it. That's it. But, and always put a date on it. I think I shared this with you before. I read something just a couple months ago that the place, they did a survey to all throughout America. I don't know. I never get any of these surveys, but apparently they do surveys. And they did a survey, and the state that most American, or the state that had the highest percentage of Americans that wanted to visit was Hawaii. Okay. And yet it's the state that had the lowest percentage of people that actually been there. So everyone essentially just puts on their goal. I want to go to Hawaii. I want to go to Hawaii, but they never get there, because if you don't put a date on it, there's no time frame. There's no goal to get there. There's no plan. There's no structure. And then to Denise's point, once you figure out where you want to go, how much is it going to cost? First class, coach, whatever it may be. What hotels do you want to stay at? Be more specific in the goals that you set. Then it becomes reality. And then it's like, all right, now I can really go for something. On that note, though, make sure that you are realistic in the goals that you set. So let's just stay on the same topic. Well, I want to go to Hawaii. I want to take the whole family to Hawaii. First class tickets. We're going to stay at the Ritz on the beach. We're blah, 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 blah. Well, how much is this going to cost you? Well, it's going to cost me $90,000 for the whole family, the aunts, uncles, the whole thing. Okay, great. How much do you have saved right now? Well, I have none. When do you want to go? I'm hoping in June. That's probably not going to happen. Okay, I want it to happen, but it's probably not going to happen. So you have to be somewhat realistic in the goals as well. Now, it doesn't mean that you just set the goals really low, right? But you have to be somewhat realistic on it. Sometimes agents get mad at me because they'll say, well, I want to close 50 transactions this year. And I say, great. How many did you close last year? Well, I closed 4. I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad that you're shooting for 50, but the chances of going from 4 to 50 is probably not likely. Okay. So why don't you shoot for 10, 15, something like that? So you have to be realistic in the goals as well. All right. Second point is a realistic, workable business plan. A realistic, workable business plan. So this kind of talks a little bit about, that's kind of like the same thing we talk about with the goals. The business plan has to be the same in terms of realistic and workable. So here's what I mean by that. Well, my business plan says that I'm going to work 300 days this year. You're not going to work 300 days this year. Okay, and it's not a shot at you. It's just nobody works 300 days a year. The average real estate agent works 210. Okay, you're not going to work 300 days. Well, my business plan says I'm going to make 50 contacts a day, every working day for the entire year. You would be, I think it's possible, but I don't know anyone that does it. I know Mike Putnam said he did it for an entire year at one point. I don't know anyone that averages 50 contacts a day for an entire year. Right? I'm going to go door knock every expired in my neighborhood every day. Like, you're probably not going to do that either. So you have to set a realistic, workable business plan. How many days are you going to work? Remember, when you write a business plan, it has to be realistic because nobody's impressed by your fake numbers. Okay, this is really important when you're putting together a business plan. Well, I'm going to work 300 days this year. That'll impress them. Like, no, it's not. I know you're a liar. I'm going to make 50 contacts a day. You're a liar. That's not impressive because you're not going to do it. Okay? Nobody's impressed by your fake numbers. Not me, not Neil, not your coach, not your family. Nobody is. So you have to have a realistic, workable business plan. How many days are you going to work? How many contacts are you realistically going to make? Are you going to door knock every expired? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. Are you going to go hit the for sale button? What are you going to do? But create a realistic, workable business plan to follow. If you don't have a realistic plan, you don't have a path to follow. Okay. But the problem with not being realistic is that, one, you get so far off track that now your goals seem way off, even though you might be having a good year. Or two, you can't really track your numbers correctly. Because your goals say this, and then you put your numbers in the numbers analyzer, and then what does it say? Oh, you're off by this many. Can't do that. Okay. A realistic, workable business plan. But part of having a business plan is you need to track your numbers. You need to know where your business is coming from. So you know, well, I'm expecting this much from this source. I'm going to be prospecting this source. I'm going to be doing this. So you need to track your stuff. But you need to put together a realistic, workable business plan. All right, number 3, a daily schedule designed for productivity. A daily schedule designed for productivity. So here's what I mean by daily schedule designed for productivity. 80% of your day should be in money-making activities. 80% of your day should be in money-making activities. Money-making activities include things like prospecting, lead follow-up, presenting offers, negotiating contracts, going on appointments. Those are money-making activities. What aren't money-making activities are things like administration, research, things along those lines. So what you need to do is take a look at your schedule and figure out, is my schedule that I have, well, let me back up. Some of you need to create a schedule. Start with step 1. We can help do that if you haven't gotten that far yet. Once you create a schedule, look at your schedule and say, okay, is my schedule actually set up to have an 80% of my day based on productivity? Because if your schedule is not set up that way, then you're not even going to come close. So now let's say your schedule is set up for 80% productivity. And then now the question is, am I following this schedule where 80% of my day is in production-based activities, or am I doing 50% of my day is production-based and the other 50% is not? Does anybody know how you can figure that out? What exercise you can do to figure that out? It's called a time motion study. What that means is, generally you can do this every hour. Is every hour, write down what you accomplished for the previous hour. And then do that every hour throughout the workday. So meaning, let's say you start your day at 8. At 9 o'clock, write down what did you accomplish between 8 and 9. And then at 10 o'clock, what did you accomplish between 9 and 10. 11 o'clock, what did you accomplish between 10 and 11. If you want it, when you get really good at this, you do it every 15 to 30 minutes. but start with an hour and then figure out, but you have to be specific in what you accomplished. Otherwise it won't work. Let me give you an example. You say, well, from 9 to 10, well, I prospected. Okay, that could be misleading. You have to say I prospected and I made 3 contacts. Well, if you made 3 contacts, you didn't prospect from 9 to 10. Okay. So you have to be specific with what you accomplished. But 80% of your day should be in production-based activities. You need to spend 80% of your day making money, 20% of your day servicing that money. And typically the biggest distraction from getting an 80% productivity day is technology. Keep going back to the email. Anyone guilty of any time that email box bings, you rush to it to see what it is? We got to see, who is it? And what percentage of the time is it important? Very little. Very little. I got an email. Maybe they accepted my offer. Do you have any offers out? No. Boy, that's really going to be hard to do. I don't have any offers written, and I'm checking to see if they accepted it. Holy cow. Right? Technology. All right. Point number 4, the discipline to role play and practice every day. The discipline to role play and practice every day. Let's make this very simple. Professionals practice, amateurs don't. Professionals practice, amateurs don't. There's story after story after story. And so we don't have to bog down with all of these of professional athletes, entertainers, whatever the case may be, practicing more than the rest. You know, we talk about this in sports all the time, but it's in any field, whatever you may be. You know, stand-up comedy, which is one of my personal favorite things. You know, they talked to Jerry Seinfeld one day and they said, hey, so when you became a stand-up comedian, were you just first set, you just knocked it out of the park? He said, no, the first time I went on stage, I stunk and I ran off stage. It's like, I was terrible. It wasn't any good. Now, you don't think of that now. The guy's worth $1 billion. But he talked about how he just had to keep, he was 18 years old the first time he went on stage. And then he just kept going and going and getting better 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 over and over and over again. He just kept doing the practice. He said his mom used to laugh at him because he'd be in the mirror talking to a comb. He was telling jokes, like he was getting practice. Professionals do it. Amateurs don't. You know, I remember the story of when, for those of you that follow basketball, years ago, well, not years ago, like decades ago, but a while ago, LeBron James was on the Miami Heat, and it was him and Dwayne Wade and whatnot. And the first year they didn't win the championship. So the second year, you know, they're obviously the favorites to go. So they play the Lakers, and they beat the Lakers. It was in Miami. They beat the Lakers. So LeBron, Dwayne Wade, they go shower, they get cleaned up. They're walking, you know, through the court to get to their cars, and they noticed that Kobe was down there practicing after the game because he had a bad shooting night. So he was just shooting 15-footers constantly. Now the game's over. They lost the game. And the story goes, Dwayne looks at LeBron and goes, if we want to win a championship, that's what we got to be like. And they turned around, went back to the locker room, got their clothes back on, and went out and practiced that afternoon. That's what then they ended up going to win the championship that year. That's what professionals do. You have to accept the fact that if you want to be a professional, you have to role play and practice every day. Not when you feel like it, not every other day, every day. It's part of the gig. It has to be a no matter what. Now, here's the other thing, though. You have to practice and role play at a high intensity level. Because I will say this quote every day if I have to. Poor practice, no matter how much you do, will not make you any better. So it's not just the discipline to role play and practice every day. It's the discipline to do it at the most intense level possible. Now, I get it. The adrenaline's not there, so it's not as quite as realistic as possible. but do the best you can. Write notes. Okay. If you're doing a pre-qual role play, actually write their answers. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,600 square feet. Okay. Don't just go through the motions. That's not how you're going to get any better. Okay. Basketball players don't just go, you know what? You know what we're going to do today? I'm just going to do some layups, maybe shoot some jumpers with my opposite hand. That's not what they're going to do. Okay. Next point here, specific, effective prospecting and strong lead follow-up. You want to elevate from amateur to professional, specific, effective prospecting and strong lead follow-up. Specific, effective prospecting and strong lead follow-up.
Robert, another thing that Michael Putnam said is that he makes calls every Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. So he gets a lot more people at home. So
Yeah.
I keep thinking I'm going to do that, but so far I haven't picked up the phone on a Sunday night.
I don't know anyone else who does. So don't feel bad, Donna. Yeah, it's pretty wild. 6 to 8 on a Sunday. But that's, to him, that's a specific, effective prospecting. 6 to 8 on Sunday. I get 2 hours. I'm the only one calling. I might get people. You have to come up with a specific, effective prospecting. What you can't do, this is what you can't do. This is what amateurs do. Well, it's Monday, so I'm going to get up and, you know, call some people. I'm going to get up and just go hit some doors. Like, there's no specific plan. There's not an effective plan. Okay. I'm going to call these people because why? Why are you calling this particular group? Well, it's a numbers game. Yeah, okay. Why are you calling this group? Well, I have a buyer that's looking in this area. Okay, that's specific. And effective is following a script and trying to find a deal. Well, I'm calling this group because for rent by owners are a great topic. I'm calling this group because they're condos that are 2 bedrooms or smaller, and I want to see if they want to sell. I'm calling this group because I have a listing and I just want to call around the area, or door knocking, calling, whatever the case may be. But you can't just say, well, I'm calling Alhambra. Why? I don't know. Just calling Alhambra. Okay, that's good. So you have to be specific in who you're targeting. And then effective is, do you have a script? Do you follow the script? Okay. Is it an actual profitable prospecting source for you? That's also part of effective. Let me give you an example. Well, here's what I want to do. I really want to call around this area. Okay, great. What's the turnover in that area? Well, I don't know. You should look that up. Well, the turnover is once every 28 years. I would probably call a different neighborhood. Because calling a neighborhood that turns over once every 28 years, would you consider that to be effective? No. No. Right? So don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Here it is. Here it is. Well, Robert, I really want to break into this area. Okay, great. Have you previewed any homes in that area? No. Do you work in that area? No. Do you live in that area? No. Have you ever closed a home in that area? No. But you're going to call that area? Yeah. Would you consider that effective prospecting? No. I'm not saying you can't expand out, but go preview a home or something. Go look up the stats if you want to go break into a neighborhood. Don't just call. Right? That's not effective. Specific, effective prospecting. Your database. Your database. Call your database for a specific reason. And don't act, some of you don't act like you follow the script. Some of you do, but some of you don't. I hear it. You think I'm not paying attention on open mic, but I am. And I hear some of these open mics and it's really just, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, you know, if you know anyone in real estate that looking for real estate, let me know. And I just go, I don't remember role playing that one. Your database, specific, effective. Call them. I'm so glad I got you home. I want to give you an update of what's going on in the marketplace. blah, 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 blah. Who do you know that might be looking to take advantage of this? Specific, effective prospecting at all levels. All right. That's what it's about. Not just door knocking randomly, calling randomly, not having a plan, not knowing where you're going to go, not knowing what you're going to do. But here's also part of a specific, effective prospecting. Know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Okay. I know this is one of the things I beat to death, but I'm just hoping one day more than 3 people will listen. If you haven't closed an expired listing for 5 years, you may consider calling somebody else. It's just a thought. Okay. But I know no one's going to listen to that. So we're going to go on to the next point, which is scripted for every conversation. Amateur to professional is scripted for every conversation. Here's a key point. Pros are not caught off guard. Pros are not caught off guard. Let's be honest here. How many different objections are really out there?
Maybe about 6.
Yeah, maybe. At most 6, right? So if it's price, commission, I have a friend or family in the business, I want to think about it, something like that, of a motivated seller. Because a seller might say, well, I'm not going to do it until I retire. I want to wait till whatever, but whatever. Motivated buyer or seller. You really only have 4, 5, 6 different objections. That's the reality that we deal with. If there's only that many objections, should you ever be caught off guard when they ask you one? No. I mean, there's not 40 different objections. I know we have 40 different objection handlers. You only get 5 or 6 different objections. And if they throw you something that's a real curveball, give me an example. You work for Century 21 and they go, I've never heard of your company. They throw you a curveball like that. You're like, okay, well, let's talk about that. You'll figure it out, but you're probably not going to hear that. Okay, or whatever company you probably work for, right? I don't see your signs in the neighborhood. You go through your entire real estate career without hearing that objection. Maybe you hear it maybe once, twice. Very rarely are you going to hear that. Okay, which, as you know, the correct objection handler to that is, Robert, I never see your signs in the neighborhood. That's because my homes sell so fast. Sign goes up, comes right back down. But you should never be caught off guard. As a matter of fact, because there's so small amount of objections, you should have 3 or 4 different ways of handling every objection. It's like when someone asks a question and say, do you want the long answer or the short answer? That should be your mentality when they give you an objection. We want you to cut your commission. All right, do you want the long handler or the short one? Let's go with the short one. No. Any other questions? Okay, let's go with the long one instead. Okay. Okay. I got them both. What do you want? All right. Scripted for every conversation. Prospecting, you're scripted. Lead follow-up, you're scripted. Listing presentation, you're scripted. Buyer consultation, you're scripted. Objection handlers, you're scripted. Presenting offers, you're scripted. Writing offers, you're scripted. Everything. The whole thing. Right? Now, here's the big thing. In order to get scripted for every conversation, you just simply eliminate the ego. You have to forget what your mom told you when she said you were a natural born salesperson. It's like Bobby Boucher, but mama said, no, stop it. Some of you don't know the Bobby Boucher reference. That's okay. We'll get past it. Another day. Eliminate the ego. Scripted for every conversation. All right, a couple more points here. Pros operate from controlled emotions. Pros operate from controlled emotions. Keep the emotions between the lines. Essentially what that means is that amateurs get overly dramatic, which means they get too high and they get too low. Professionals keep it between the lines. Because when you get too high, you're not very productive. And when you get too low, you're not very productive. So when you're on a constant emotional roller coaster, you're only productive between here and here. And if you're here, and then it's like, okay, productive, and then you're not productive anymore, and then you're productive, then you're not productive anymore. You're too much on an emotional roller coaster. You have to keep the emotions between the lines, okay? Don't get too high, don't get too low. Now, that doesn't mean don't be emotional. Be excited when things go well, be frustrated when they go bad, but you have to keep it between the lines. You can't get too emotional on a process. Here's the deal. Does everything go completely smooth in real estate? Okay, so everyone's in agreement on no.
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 No, it doesn't go smooth in real estate. So you have to keep your emotions between the lines. Otherwise, this is your day. I got an appointment. Yay! Appointment canceled. Shoot! I got a listing. Yay! We're in escrow. Oh, appraisal came in short. Shoot! This is your day. You can't do that to yourself. Real estate is it's too much going on. You have to keep your emotions between the lines. And here's, all jokes aside, here's what'll happen if you don't keep your emotions between the lines. Burnout. You'll burn yourself out. You'll be emotionally exhausted and you just won't make it very long. That's just the truth. All right, I got 4 more points here. Professionals ask a lot of questions and are curious. Professionals ask a lot of questions and are curious. We talk about that a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but professionals ask questions constantly. Tell me more about that. Why are you doing that? Where did you hear that? You know, like everything's a question. So what I would challenge you to do is to work on, whatever somebody gives you a statement or whatever somebody gives you an objection, don't handle it right away. Ask a question. Well, we think the market's going to crash. Okay, great. I'm curious. Where did you read that? I'm curious. What information have you gathered that makes you think the market's going to crash, instead of going, well, that's not going to happen, and let me tell you why. All right. Well, we want to wait because we think we want to wait to see what happens with the market. Okay, great. Well, what are you waiting for? What do you need to see from the market? Right? Asking a question instead of, well, you don't want to wait because let me tell you. Questions, curious. This is one of my favorite Mike Ferry lines ever. He says, asking questions is the difference between making a fortune and just making a living. Asking questions is the difference between making a fortune and just making a living. You have to get better at asking questions. Now, here's a little tip for you. Just like we talked about, there's not many objections. You really only need to master a few questions, because you could ask the same questions to every person. You don't have to come up with new questions for everybody. So if you can get 5, 6 really good questions, you could just rinse, wash, repeat. It's like, okay, I got these 5, 6 questions locked in. So whenever I get on the phone or whenever I'm in person, whatever, I've got these 5, 6 questions I can ask to anybody forever. Nobody will know the difference. You don't have to come up with new stuff every time. So figure it out. Worst case scenario, if you ever get stuck, this is what you should do. Say, tell me more about that. If you ever get stuck, well, we're thinking about waiting to see what happens with the market. And Your brain doesn't work. Anyone ever have that where you know what to say, but at that very moment, your brain doesn't work? Okay. So it's me and 39 liars. Great. Okay. So when that happens and the brain doesn't work, if you can just muster out, tell me more about that. It'll buy you so much time. Well, we're thinking about waiting to see what happens with the market. Tell me more about that. Well, we want to see you. All right. I freed myself up. Come on, brain. Don't do this to me again. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. All right. All right. Last 3 points here. This next point is kind of a follow-up on asking questions, that professionals are intent on listening. They're intent on listening. But here's the key. Listening to understand, not listening to know when to respond. It's a difference. Are you listening to understand or just listening to know when is your cue to respond? So you're going through the presentation and it's like you're listening to them, but it's like, okay, are you done? Okay, great. Well, buyers determine value by, and it's like you didn't hear anything that they said. Okay, you're listening to understand, not necessarily just listening to respond. Now this goes back to the other previous point though. What is something that you need to do to help listen to understand as opposed to listening to respond? What do you need to have really figured out?
Know the script.
Know the scripts. Right, Valerie. If you know the scripts,
Memorize.
if you memorize the scripts, you're not really concerned about what to say next because you've already got it. So you can listen more intently on what they're trying to say. If you don't know the scripts, you're just worried about what to say next. So you're not really listening to understand. You're just listening. Okay, that's the end of their cue. The next line is this. Know the scripts. All right, last 2 points here. Elevate from amateur to professional. Never allow rejection to affect your results. Never allow rejection to affect your results. Real estate is a numbers game, which means real estate is a rejection game. You're going to face massive amounts of rejection. You can't let that affect your results. You need to get to the end result, no matter how much rejection it takes. Now, the goal is to face less rejection as you get better and more experienced. But if your goal is to get a listing appointment this week, for example, my goal is to get a listing appointment, then you have to get the listing appointment. And if that means that 200 people have to reject you, then 200 people have to reject you before you get a listing appointment. But you still have to get the result. Now, if you're at that stage in your career where 100 people have to reject you, great, then 100 people have to reject you. It doesn't matter. You can't let the rejection affect your result. You have to get the result. You just might have to face more rejection. And then just keep getting better. Go back to being some of the previous points. Figure out what's more specific, what's more effective in terms of prospecting, lead follow-up, things like that, to where it takes you less rejection to get the result. But you got to get the result. Don't worry about the rejections. You have to get the results. And if you worry too much about the rejections, like, well, I got rejected 100 times this week. This just wasn't my week. No. What was your goal for the week? Well, I needed this. Then keep going and get rejected. Figure out why you keep getting rejected and get better. And then keep going to get rejected until you get your goal. Can't let the rejection affect your results. And then the last point is don't allow negativity into your day. Don't allow negativity into your day. We talk about that all the time, so I don't need to spend too much time on it. But look, amateurs let negativity into their day. That's why they're also so emotional. Ups and downs and this and that. Professionals don't. Professionals don't. Is anyone watching the show on HBO Max, Winning Time, the Lakers show, the 80s, about the 80s Lakers? So on that point, reminded me of it. I was watching the episode last night. It reminded me of this point of don't allow negativity into your day. And the doctor was giving some bad news to Jerry about Jerry Buss's mother. And he said, your Dr. No in the house that Dr. Yes built. And I just thought that was a phenomenal line. Now, it was a highly emotional because he was talking about his wife or his mom having cancer. But the line itself was that he's such a positive person. He's not letting that negativity into him, even if it's a doctor telling him that the results are not good, right? Your doctor know in the house that Dr. Yes built. Like, that's the type of stuff you need to have. You need to have that positive mindset. You can't let that negativity get in because it just seeps. And once the negativity seeps in there, it holds on. The professionals don't let the negativity in. The amateurs do. Now, professionals get negative. That happens. But the other difference is that they get it out quicker. They're negative for a minute. They're negative most for a day, but it's not something that carries on for weeks. Amateurs, something bad happens. Sometimes you don't hear from them for like 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. So there you go. Questions on anything we went over today?
For practicing, I heard an interview with Denzel Washington, a professional actor. And he
Yep.
said, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
Ain't on the stage. There you go. That's it. Not trip. There you go. Very good. Very good. Yeah, Denzel. He knows.